Hi, Maria here. I'm gonna make a little clay figure today. Like I make all kinds of clay figures, so this is an example here. But I had this tomato paste can. You know how they come in pretty small tin cans, and I said I can make something out of that. So I'm making an armature here for which I later decided to become a mouse. So here, as you can see, I made quite a bit of um, foil in that ball just to make it really sturdy and the right size. And here I'm using painter's tape to tape it to the tin can. And you can use masking tape. And I decided to make ears, so I'm using some 19 gauge steel wire. And you want to make them sturdy because clay can be fragile if you bang it around any. So here I'm just bending some ear shapes, and it's easy to push them in into the foil. The more you arrange the armature before you put the clay on, the easier it is um, to actually form the clay around it. So here I'm trying to attach it with some tape, and that wire is very strong. And now I have a pretty much a round form. I'm not looking for perfection here. But I decided to make the ears even stronger by attaching some sturdy cardboard. In the past, I've been making cats and dogs. I was wanting to try a different creature. And without really thinking about it, I made mouse ears. So, of course, it was a mouse before I even decided to make a mouse. So there you have it. It's the beginnings. I'm using white polymer clay. It's the Sculpey 3, but you can use Super Sculpey, which is really nice for sculptures. And I keep it in the refrigerator because it's so warm here in Florida, and it's easier to work with it if it's not so warm because it's sticky. And you can use a pasta machine or a roller pin or a clay roller and make it as thin as you can, like about 1/8 of an inch. Because we're not looking for bulk, we're just covering the can and the head. And I'm just kind of pressing it in there. It will be baked onto the metal very easily. It's really fun to make figures, and if you never had tried it, it's just a lot of fun. It doesn't have to be perfect, it's really quite fun to do like rustic looking figures, or like primitive country style. And of course I wanted to cover the bottom too, so I put that on there. As you can see, the clay is quite thin. So I did the back part of the ear first, and smooth that in, and then the front. And you can decide then how bulky you want to make the ear. I'm just more or less following the armature that I had already set up. Polymer clay is very forgiving and easy to work with. Or you can use air dry clay, or epoxy sculpt, which is epoxy clay. But I find that my preferred material is polymer clay. And also, you have to think of the armature with polymer clay. You have to use an armature that won't melt in the oven. So nothing plastic. It's okay with the tape there, and you have some cardboard, and it's okay. But I have sometimes forgotten that use styrofoam, and it will just make the clay kind of explode. So it's a lot of trial and error. I realized I needed a snout for the mouse, so I just had to cut an opening there. And again, we want to anchor the snout with wire and some foil. It would have been easier to make it at the beginning, but better late than never, right? And here I'm just trying to figure out what the snout would look like. I'm making it a little exaggerated. It was going to be cute with a large nose at the end. So at this time, the foil is pretty hard. You have to push hard. And I use some just craft glue to anchor the wire into the head, and it makes it stronger. It's a bit fiddly. And I realized I had cut the wire really too short to anchor our nose at the end. So I ended up, as you will see, to add another wire for the nose. But I was happy with the mouse shape in general. I could have avoided that to have if I had had a longer piece of wire, but oh well. And I glued that into the armature. And you always put some more clay around it. When you bake the clay, it does grip onto whatever is around it pretty well. So there won't be any loose or moving parts. And here I'm going to use some bacon bond. It's something that is kind of like liquid polymer clay. You add it to parts that you want to glue to the polymer clay, and then when you bake it, it becomes really strong. And there's nose. And I'm just using a needle tool to make the eye sockets. They're nothing special, they're just two slashes that has an eye shape. And I'm using quilting pins for eyes. And they will go in after I bake the clay because they are made of plastic. So I don't know how well they would fare in the oven. And then I'm also using the needle tool to make a smiley mouth. Mouse mouth. So it's looking pretty happy by now. But I decided it needs some teeth. Like in the cartoons, the mice always have two big front teeth. And some bacon bond. And there are the teeth. It gives it a bit of character. And I decided I wanted her to wear a apron. I thought aprons are kind of fun. So I'm just really winging it here. Trial and error. And I needed some straps. And again, I'm using here some bacon bond to attach these pieces. It would attach without the bacon bond, but I just use it for extra strength. So I added 2 baby mice in a pocket, and they're just there's just a flat piece of clay for the pocket, and I made tiny little mice. And there I was have had to make holes for whiskers, and that's tricky. I'm using a darning needle, like the heavy duty needle with a sharp point. So I decided to give the mouse 3 whiskers. Make sure that the holes are really all the way through. The whiskers in this case are made from jewelry wire that you make bracelets and stuff with, but they're coated, I think, with plastic. So it's a metal wire that has, I think, a plastic coating. So I didn't want to put it through the oven. So here I had trouble, so I'm making bigger holes. And they'll be okay after baking. And I was gonna put some, oh, that was later, sorry. Oh, I was gonna put some whiskers on the baby mice, but the clay is so soft it just they wouldn't hold up in those small heads like that. So I decided not to do it. You can use, if you have pre-made holes, you can use fishing line or even some metal wire. You can find a very thin gauge wire and use that. And it works. You just have to make sure the holes are big enough or at least goes through well. And here I'm gonna make some arms for her. So I've flattened the end of it to make hands. I'm just using a knife to cut the shape of the fingers, and then I'm going in and kind of making the fingers round. But again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Of course, mice don't have fingers, so one could do, well, I don't know how their front paws look, but um, I just made fingers because it's cute. Okay, I got two. Second arm and try to get it the same shape as the other arm. It's not always easy. And there I flattened the end of it to make like a palm or the hand part. And just fiddling with the fingers to get them separated and roundish. At this point the clay is very sticky because it's warm. And I wanted to attach the hands so they don't break off easily. I just pushed them into the underlying clay. And now I'm just evening it out, everything out a little bit and making sure everything looks as good as I can make it. And I'm going to bake it. And here it's baked and cold. I found out that there was a crack on the bottom, so I've used some epoxy sculpts to fix the cracks around the edges here. And it's a two-part epoxy clay. It takes 24 hours to dry, but I'm gonna just paint and leave that part unpainted, and I will go in and touch it up tomorrow. And here I just smooth out the clay with some water. So that's the good clay to make repairs. And I had decided to give her some white gloves for some reason. And so I made little epoxy sculpt cuffs or a line where the gloves ended. It's just a little detail. And for some reason, the clay was not really cooperating today. And here I started painting her, and it's going to be gray, of course, like a mouse. So I'm using artist paints, but you could easily use any crafts paints in a little plastic bottle. I like my crafts paints because I know how they work. So it's kind of cute. She's going to be gray and then some other accent colors. Thing is, you just want to keep painting and you have to wait till it dries. Otherwise, you get paint all over. And those are the eyeballs, and the teeth are white, of course. And here I'm using some craft glue to attach those pins for eyes. All right. And I'm gonna give her a pink nose, of course. I don't want it too bright, so like a soft pink. Pink and gray looks so great together, doesn't it? So I decided to give her a really bright pink or like a magenta apron and a yellow pocket because I think magenta and gray look so good together. So I put on second coat here, and there's a lot of touch-ups. There usually is when there's like two colors button up to each other like that. But I use different size um, brushes. So a bigger brush for the gray, and then at the corners where there's I'm gonna meet another color, I use a small tiny brush, and in corners. And here the little mice getting some eyes and mouths. You can see the gloves are painted white, and that's a big button on her back. So it's just little details at the very end. And I have some a pink paint pen to do their pink noses. They're just pointed clay. So now comes the fiddling with the whiskers. And there's one in. It's hard to see, I'm sorry. Here it was a little hard. So I just went in with a needle again to make sure that the hole was strong and big enough. So if you use a wire, it's got to be something that is sturdy enough to push through the hole. So metal is best, or a strong fish line would work too. So I got lucky there at the end. I'm using super glue to attach, to fill those holes I made with some super glue and keep the wires in place. It doesn't take a lot of glue to do that, and it's transparent. It doesn't really show up at all. And then I just trim them to look like the way I want them to look. So that's about it. Thank you.